Good morning. I have the kitchen tidied up enough that I could record this and maybe make a video for you. This is one of the hens that I had, and the weasel got in and killed them during the winter. And so I put them in the freezer, and I'm going to use this carcass now and make a pot of soup. Just a Jotham Bessie style pot of soup. No recipe for this one. So what I'm doing, I'll take my filleting knife and I'm going to cut off the breast. I'm going to make chicken burgers out of the breast later on today. And this time I'll make sure I cut them thin enough that they'll cook well. In the past I cut the whole thing out and then I cut them in half afterwards after they got cooked so far through, which wasn't a very bright idea in my opinion. The breast actually comes in flavors. So each bite of So I'll lay this in here now. I want to taste that water. The last pot I made, I didn't put in quite enough salt. Yeah. Third of a cup of salt I put in there. 1/3 of a cup. It's sea salt, so it is different as well than the regular table salt you get. It's got those extra salts in it, which gives it a different taste. Salt and pepper is to taste, and I like my stuff spicy. What was that, about 1/5 of a cup maybe? Now we're going out to the garden to get some herbs to put in that pot. We'll take some lemon thyme. We'll take some tarragon. This is a French thyme. I'm going to shape it again. If you like celery and parsley, you'll love lovage. I need to clean the dirt off this one because I want to be able to just dump it in the pot when I go in. Let's take some flowers from the borage. The flowers are stronger than the leaves, but I'm going to take a couple leaves as well. This will give a cucumber taste to the soup. We need some parsley. Put the main parsley plant now. Wondering, I can take some off of that, but I can also now take a couple of sprigs from the young plants. I didn't cut down these chives when we did the herb harvest. I'll cut these off now. Put in here some oregano, some savory, now this turnip, of course I've got to boil chicken bones for a while. But turnip you don't let get very large, so I have a pocket knife here with me. When I do the next step, I'm going to put this turnip in the soup. If you let them get large, they get a little bitter. I almost forgot. The sage is growing lovely. I can't take a lot because, like I say, this is the first year and it's not really that big yet, but I'll take a few leaves and cut them up. Now I'll just put those in the pot. Stir it up. The chicken bone is a little bit out. I'm going to almost fill up this pot because then I'll have a couple bottles of chicken broth to take before I make my soup. So there it is. I'll put a cover on that now and wait for it to come to a boil. So it's been 8 hours. I brought this to a boil and then I turn it down on my stove to about 1.5, and then it settles down to just barely under boiling, and let it sit there all day. I just filled it up, so that's why it's still right full to the top. And I'll turn the burner off now. I added curry to this. The two spices that I currently use a lot of that I can't grow yet are curry and black pepper. It's the next morning now. Make sure my hands are all spotlessly clean. Get the bones out of here. Dark from the curry, you see. Now, I broke the end on. This is just a plastic thing, that's why. What I want to do, let's see if I can hang it on here. Is now get out all those pieces, because like the thyme and stuff like that, it has the twigs and that on it, which I don't want in my soup. So the taste is gone completely throughout the liquid now. What I'll do is I'll drain it back and forth between these two pots here now. Now I can put that back over here and let it start to warm up again. I spilled a little bit. Me a seat and pick the meat off the bones. Break it up into little pieces as you go. And we put the meat then back in the pot. Before this warms up, I'm going to take out two 500ml bottles of the chicken broth because I know I'm going to have to anyway. I have the main vegetables spread out here now. As I was doing my walkabout this morning, I found another turnip that I could harvest to put in this soup. So I have these two turnip and 3 small rutabaga from last year. I have my compost bin beside me, compost bucket. This is one place where I cut the vegetables up into little squares, and I measure it out because I put 3 cups each in at first and then see what I got then. So I guess I do have 3 cups of turnip. I need to go to the cellar to get some more rutabaga. Last year's carrots. Potatoes. Let's peel those directly into the compost bin. Make that 2 bottles full. So when I went to get the rutabaga, I picked a hip chug full of sugar snaps while I was at it. Now they'll go in pod and all, but I'll still chop them up into little pieces. This I bought in the store. I know you can grow it here in Newfoundland. I just haven't figured out how yet. And I'm going to put the rest of what I've got left here in the pot now. There, we'll let that simmer for 4 hours. At the 2-hour mark, I will put in 1 cup of uncooked rice. Now I let this simmer for almost 4 hours. I turned it off and let it cool down. Now it's easier to stir with this one. There we go. You see, I don't have a pressure canner. I found this way to give it a nice strong seal. When I store my bottles, I clean them well, wash them out, and I store them with the lid on. I don't have this ring put on tight, just loosely, so it will keep any contaminants out of the bottle. Take off, inspect the lid, make sure it's still good. And I've got some water here on the warmer. I'll put the lid in the water to soften the seal. What I'm looking for when a seal is used before, you can see a little ring there where it conformed to the bottle, and it will get deeper as you use it. Warming and cooling of those seals will harden them over time, so they can only be used so many times. And if that ring is really deep, it shows that it's gone hard. Putting them in the warm water like that won't help you. The other thing to look for is any nicks. Can you see that? Like that. That indicates that the seal, the lid itself, there is blemishes there that would be a weak point and you lose your seal. This is a deep one, so I'm not going to use that one. I'll put a new one in for that bottle. Now I don't have much battery life left, so I'm going to show you. It's about a half an inch down from the top. It could afford to be a little lower, but not much. I think if you had too much space, you're going to have a weak seal, as well as if you had too little. I'm going to turn off the camera now and fill up these bottles. I have some bottles here to put in now because I had those chicken broth ones that I took out earlier. So now I take my lid, lay it on, and I just put the ring on lightly just to hold it down onto the bottle. I put 2 of these jugfuls of water in that pot, just from the hot water tap. Start with. I have one of those canning rigs for this, but it's the old-fashioned thing, and it's made for the round bottles. Now they make square bottles, and those that canning thing don't fit. The bottles don't fit the rack that you put in your canner. This now, they're just barely covered. So I'm going to, this one's not quite covered, so I'm going to add a little bit more water to give them a ½ inch at least covering. And now I'll turn on the burner on high, and when it comes to a boil, I will boil it for, well, maybe I'll turn it down a little bit more. I'll boil it for 20 minutes instead of the 10 minutes that they usually do with hot water bath canning. This canner don't actually come to a rolling boil on this burner. It just does that, you can see the water churning quite fast there. Have to keep the cover on because if you don't, it'll stop boiling. Now hopefully you can hear this. It works the same as before. Hear that pop? Just as soon as I took it out of the water, it sealed. By the time that cools down, it'll be a very strong seal. Now while they're cooling down, I'll tighten up the rings. Hot. Now, take out some water and put in some cold water. One, because I don't want to put cool bottles into boiling hot water. But the other reason is now when this comes to a boil, I know for sure that the heat has gone completely through entirely the entire ingredients. So if there's any bacteria in there, then the boiling will have killed it, and then the seal is impossible for any to get back in, right? Whereas if I put this in boiling water, it may boil before the heat gets through the ingredients in the bottles. The water is still a little warm. Now I have to wait for that to come to a boil again.